Hi, welcome to Talking Philosophy. To introduce you to Talking Philosophy, I thought I'd talk about the difference between philosophy and religion and science, and do so by telling a story that I've been using for years to introduce the differences to students. Those of you who are philosophers yourself may recognize this as Peirce's four methods for the fixation of belief at work. But I do think it does a great job of explaining how each of these things may have a role in our life and why they don't seem to contradict each other. Not really, as you'll see. Anyway, let's go ahead with our story. Once upon a time, there was a boy, a small boy, let's say about 3. And he comes down on Christmas morning, and instead of the bland family room that he's used to with a TV and a couch and not much more, there's a giant green tree decorated with lights and tinsel, and there's presents under the tree, all wrapped up. And he goes, "Oh my goodness gracious, oh my goodness gracious, what's going on here?" Filled with anxiety. He wants to relax and enjoy everything he sees. He wants to go open those presents, but he just doesn't know for sure what's going on. So he turns to his parents and says, "Where did this come from?" And the reply is Santa Claus. Now, he doesn't know Santa Claus. The parents didn't take him to see Santa because they're afraid he wouldn't handle it well. Just 3 after all. But the idea that the presents had a real provenance that came from somewhere, that someone wasn't going to come in and yank it away from him, relieved the tension. He was no longer filled with the anxiety. Now he could relax and enjoy the tree and the lights and the presents. Now, this is the method of belief Peirce referred to as the method of tenacity. You take the first explanation that comes along and you hang on for dear life. Now, a lot of people don't seem to like the method of tenacity. Why? I don't know. It's how we get through huge portions of our life. Most of us don't seek real scientific explanations for anything. We just go, you turn on the light comes on. You turn on the TV comes on. So it's just an explanation that means nothing to us if someone tries to explain the rest of it. We just take for granted this is how it works. First explanation solves my anxieties, on I go, hanging on to those explanations for dear life. I think, in fact, in certain kinds of things in this world, the method of tenacity is the only method available. I'm going to say, particularly, I'm thinking of love. If someone has to prove that they love you, then you don't really accept that as love. If you have to prove to yourself that you love somebody, that's not really love. Or something, or some activity, or some piece of music, anything. If you have to explain it, to yourself in order to love it, I think you don't love it. Think about it. Okay, now, a couple of years go by, and our young man joins the academic world. He's off to school. And in school, the older kids tell him there is no Santa Claus. And because the older kids are right about so many things, he begins to lose that tenacious hold on Santa Claus that he had. So maybe he turns to the teacher or to the World Book Encyclopedia or mom, or in the case of Virginia O'Hanlon, a young lady at the turn of the century, New York, you write the New York Sun. Now, everybody's heard the letter sometime or another at Christmas about, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. But a lot of people don't know that Virginia's letter contains this passage, more or less. I am writing to you because my father says if you read it in the Sun, it must be true. So what you have here is the appeal to authority. Again, people badmouth the appeal to authority, but I don't know why. If you don't accept some authority in your life, and I'm going beyond tenacity now. I'm going to where you're actually going to be doing some thinking of your own. You're actually going to be involved in trying to explain the world. So that simple explanation, that simple grab onto it and hang on isn't good enough anymore. Unless you're going to reinvent the world from scratch, you're going to have to accept some authority. So unless you're going to reinvent fire yourself, you're going to have to accept that matches work. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? It's just that simple. Unless you're going to start every science, every art, every program from the absolute beginning yourself, then you're going to accept some authority. And if you're accepting authority, then that's the method you're using to fix your belief. Now, we'll say another year, maybe 2 goes by. Again, those kids over there are telling him, hey, no Santa Claus, no Santa Claus. So our young man thinks about it. He says, well, look. What are the alternatives? I see 2. One, that there is some magical guy on a sled that gets around the whole world in one night and delivers presents to all the good little boys and girls. Explanation 2, that mommy and daddy, who never seem to have any free time or any free money, find some way to get out and get presents and bring them into the house and then decorate the tree and have everything ready for the morning. Now, since our little boy happens to believe in magic, the magic explanation works for him. So he continues to believe in Santa Claus and lets mommy and daddy's possibility go away. He's made his choice. He's reasoned his way through to his own conclusion. Now, we know that his reasoning is wrong. He has a false premise about the existence of magic. But the rest of his reasoning is 2 important things. 1, it's right. And 2, it's his. Authority didn't involve any of his thinking. Tenacity just involved hanging on for dear life. But now with the method of rationality, Peirce also likes to call it the a priori method. With the method of rationality, our young man is thinking for himself. Thinking wrongly, but thinking for himself. I mean, that's one of the problems of logic, pure logic, is if the premises aren't true, your conclusion isn't really authorized, validated. It's maybe a valid argument, but it's not a sound argument. That's the distinction we make in philosophy between an argument that has the right form, that is to say, that if the premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true, as opposed to one where the premises actually are true. And so we don't call it just valid, we call it sound. And his argument, while valid, isn't sound. Now, another year goes by, and our little boy is now looking at his first bicycle. And he's really, really concerned because he wants to know if Santa Claus is going to bring him that bicycle. He really wants that bicycle, and it's an issue with him. So now he's decided the only way to find out if there's a Santa Claus or not is to get up and go look. Now, go to bed for a while, get up and come back out, check things out, see what the real story is. So he comes back out around 11:30 after being sent to bed at 8:30, and he looks out into the room and he goes, oh my God, I wish there were a Santa Claus because Daddy's never going to get that bicycle put together. Now, a couple of points here. 1, this is the scientific method. He constructs a hypothesis. There is no Santa Claus. He looks out to evaluate it. He discovers Daddy's out there, so his hypothesis is confirmed. However, it is possible that his conclusion doesn't follow from his observations. After all, it could be that he's a bad little boy, and that's why Santa Claus isn't bringing him a present. Something most people don't think about. Santa Claus would have brought it if he was a good little boy, but he's a bad little boy. In fact, most of us are bad little boys and girls, and that's why Santa Claus doesn't bring presents. Not that there isn't a Santa Claus, it's just we don't deserve it. And our parents, because they're looking out for us, because after all, they didn't deserve it and their parents didn't deserve it, and so forth, they get presents so we don't feel bad. Another good explanation. And the evidence confirms both. And that's the problem, of course, with scientific reasoning. Scientific reasoning is called inductive reasoning, and it's based on probabilities. Now, sure, it's more probable that there's no Santa Claus, and that's why we tend to feel like his observations, at least for the most part, validate his conclusion. But in the case of his reasoning about Santa Claus and the rationality method, he was 100% right. I mean, the form was right. If there is magic, Santa Claus does magic. Magic permits us to have our presents. Therefore, our presents come from Santa Claus. I mean, that works. The structure's right. It's just that the premises are false. Here, the premises can be true. That is to say, your observations are real, but your conclusion can be wrong. Induction doesn't guarantee a 100% accurate outcome. In fact, it's only as accurate as the amount of information you've collected. Now, the only empirical evidence that's 100% accurate is when you've collected all the empirical evidence. And then it stops being an inductive argument and becomes a deductive argument. Now, if we take a look at these 4 methods for the fixation of belief, we can see that everybody has to use tenacity from time to time. And everybody has to use authority from time to time. But these 2 areas of belief, these 2 approaches to belief, are much more in the domain of religion than of the other 2. I mean, let's just be honest. Almost nobody changes their religion. They take the first explanation for what they're supposed to do regarding the divine, regarding ritual, regarding all the sorts of things that religion involves, and don't look any further. If they look any further, it tends to be that they look to authority. They'll go to the holy scriptures of their work, of their religious tradition. They'll go to authorities in that religion, priests, ministers, etc. But they still don't conduct experiments. They very seldom do any reasoning that doesn't begin with my religion is the right religion. So we see that's pretty much where religion sits. Authority, tenacity. Philosophy obviously reasons. The scientific method may provide premises, but seldom provides conclusions. It's just this simple. Well, let's imagine we want to know if murder is immoral. How many people do we have to kill before we have a large enough sample size? I mean, there's 7.5 billion people on the planet. I don't know off the top of my head. You'd have to do the math. But in order to get really solid, within 5% error range and be 95% sure you're right, probably a couple 100,000 anyway. And I don't think any of us are going to go around and kill a couple 100,000 people just to conclude an argument that we already know the answer to. All murder is immoral. Why? Because the definition of murder is an immoral killing. That's in the definition. And that's what philosophy does. It analyzes definition, it constructs arguments, and from those arrives at truths. Now, the scientific method is mostly what science relies on. But remember, science has to start with some authority in order to not have to begin from scratch every time you start out on a scientific career. Each then of the methods has a place in the areas of study, but each approach to solving the doubt, quieting the doubt and bringing about the belief, each one of those is different because the method we arrive at that belief is different. And that's why they don't really compete, as I say. No one says, oh, here's how you find out religious truth. You conduct an experiment. Nobody says, oh, here's how you find out. Well, okay, peace. Some people do. Here's scientific truth. Go look it up in a holy book. But we do realize that real scientific advance has nothing to do with the method of tenacity, grabbing onto something and hanging on. If we're actually going to learn anything from science, we're going to have to go beyond that. And you're going to have to go beyond authority. Reason will play a role in science, always has. But ultimately, the goal isn't consistency of idea in science, it's harmony with the world. And as a result, the scientific method, the one method that has to appeal to the world for its outcomes, is the one science relies on. Okay. Hope that helps. Hope that gives you some idea where we're going to be going. Going to have something new real soon. Stop back in and hopefully I'll introduce you to some new ideas in philosophy that you probably haven't encountered. Thanks for coming by and keep on talking philosophy.